Okay, we're being recorded. Alrighty, so Josh, you have a presentation. Why don't we get started with that? And or Tyler, I'm not sure which one. We'll lay the groundwork for the work we're going to do and go from there.
Hi, Deborah. Thank you very much, and members of the committee. Whoever is running the Zoom, if they can give screen share to Tyler English,
Okay, let me work on that.
and he'll fire up the presentation to everyone.
Okay, Tyler, I made you co-host.
Great.
Okay, I'm just going to close my door. I'll be right back.
Just want to make sure you're seeing the full page there, Josh.
I'm seeing you're not in presentation mode. You're now in presentation mode.
Great.
Okay.
All
Okay,
right, Josh.
so I will dive in, and then Tyler and I are just going to kind of ping pong through the presentation here. So I'll start off again, Deborah and committee. Thanks for having us. Joshua Roberts, Transportation Division Manager, Department of Public Works, County of San Luis Obispo. So we were back tonight to go through the corridor concept plan that we've been working on for quite some time for LOVR. Again, I'm Joshua Roberts. With us tonight, and I think you can see him here on the Zoom, is Ariel. Ariel's with GTS. That's our consultant that's been putting this plan document together, doing some of the traffic engineering analysis for us. And then again, Tyler English is project manager. For those who were with us back in, I think, January when we presented, that was right before Tyler had started. So Jake Hudson was our project manager. Since that time, Jake's promoted to traffic ops unit, and Tyler's getting more on board and up to speed. So he's taken over as project manager for us. I did want to point out that we've got this gigantic QR code on the screen, and that just takes you to a link to the corridor plan. And I think here at the end of the study, we actually have the web address for the old guys like me who still haven't figured out how to use a QR code. Next slide. So I just want to dive in real quick on some background. Reminder that one of the main purposes of this plan was to have an amalgamation of some previously approved planning documents, the community plan, the fee study, Froome Ranch actually traffic impact study affects LOVR at Foothill, and then of course the county bikeways plan. One of our concerns was that over the almost decade of these plans going through the adoption process, we were concerned about potential conflicts, and we're also interested in looking for opportunities to engage the public, find out priorities for work, and try to set ourselves up in the position to receive grants. And not to pat ourselves on the back, but the county did recently receive an approximately $1 million grant to implement phase one of the Vineyard Drive corridor plan. So our efforts are paying off, and we want to see the same thing here, get this plan adopted and start addressing some of the priority projects. Goal for today, Deborah, hopefully, and committee, hopefully you don't mind, we're going to hijack the meeting just a little bit. And instead of going through the plan page by page and sheet by sheet, or section by section, we really want to focus in on some key areas that have been persistent areas of interest within the plan, so we can kind of keep our presentation short. We really want to have lots of time for roundtable discussion. Um, Deborah, I believe that was a kind of a key element you were looking for, is to be able to discuss and have Q&A. Tyler has the full plan document available for review, and we're happy to pull up any page, zoom in on anything that you guys want to dive into in detail. And then I'll just kind of close this section out by noting that we have received, and we're super appreciative of the comments from this committee. We've gone through and we're we're preparing just some feedback for all of you. We thought combined with feedback we're going to get tonight with those comments, we'll circle back in the next few weeks on answers. And then we, this plan is yours, and we want to make sure to incorporate as much of many of those elements as we can into the plan. Next slide.
Great. And so I'll kind of take over from here. Kind of project going through multiple rounds of public engagement got us to January, where we started circulating our administrative draft of the plan. We took that to the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and as Jake or Josh stated, as one of my first events here at the county was to go to the BAC back in February, where we received comment and endorsement from them. We then, had a scheduled meeting with you all on the 24th of April, where we received comments from the Transportation Committee. And that brings us to today, where we are, which I'm realizing my line shows to the wrong "we are here" line. We're not in April, we're in May. Here presenting to you the Transportation Committee. Kind of, again, as Josh stated, goal is get your feedback, take that feedback back to the consultant, who Ariel's on the call with us, work up a new public plan, and in mid-June draft or present the final draft of this plan. Then coming back to you all at your June meeting. At that point, we would be seeking in support in heading to the Board of Supervisors, which we have revised the timeline to take that to the Board of Supervisors in August. That way we can get a little bit more time to kind of close out public engagement as well as get your all's feedback here. As Jake or Josh stated, rather than going page by page, we wanted to just key in on some certain areas. Rodman and Petcho, Petcho to Doris, Doris to Broderson, and then Bush to Fairchild, as well as any clarifications or suggestions you all have. Either amendments to the comments that we received on the 24th, or additions that maybe you have thought since then on further review. So for those who may not have been part of Jake's last presentation, our study area started in MDO and took us all the way out to Foothill. But we really concentrated on kind of the urban area within the community of Los Osos, from Rodman really to South Bay, although this is annotating that it heads all the way out to Palmerino, but really to South Bay. We looked at not only the public engagement that we talked about, but also kind of did a technical analysis of all traffic, pedestrian, automobile, bicycle, and it's not noted here, but equestrian was also included. So really it's Los Osos Valley Road is a multimodal transportation roadway. So to start out here, we wanted to highlight Rodman in Montana. The first one is to give ourselves a little bit of a slap on the wrist. And that is, we talked about this being a combination of existing plan documents. But Rodman, the intersection here of Rodman and Petcho is the one area that wasn't supported from, or wasn't included in the circulation study or the community plans, but really from all the public engagement that we got, we just thought we had to include, that this element into the plan, which, extension of the class 1 path all the way to Rodman, then the intersection improvements there to kind of increase both pedestrian and equestrian safe crossings. The next area that we've had a lot of comments and really just stakeholder engagement is there on across from Monarch Elementary. Here there's no road widening, which is one that one of the things people mentioned quite a bit. It's really just an update to striping. We've included the left turn, two-way left turn lanes, buffered bike lanes, delineated the parking, as well as kind of improved operational improvements to the intersection. So one of the areas that we did receive some adverse comments was about road widening here, and that's one. We're not doing anything. This is all existing infrastructure.
So Tyler, can you explain the parking there? Oh, you're gonna show it now.
You just got to let me go,
Yeah,
Deborah, come on.
you and I, we're like on the same wavelength here.
You got a question, I got an answer. Um, no, so yeah, this is exactly why we included the cross section here. So, kind of the top graphic is what's there today, where we've got 10-foot parking on the south side of the road with 10-foot through lane, 12-foot left turn lane, and then coming westbound, we have a 12-foot through lane, 5-foot bike lane, and then 15 feet of really wide parking. So in consistency with our real road diet, we're showing 8-foot parking stalls, which are consistent with county standards. Buffered bike lanes, narrowing the lanes to 11 foot with a 10-foot two-way left turn lane.
And then just real quick, something that I wanted to add, if you don't mind going back to that cross section, Deborah and the committee, is that I'm sure that you're all aware that there's some strange parking restrictions along the south side of LOVR, especially through this section, and those parking restrictions would go away as a part of this plan, because now we have a full buffered bike lane. We can accommodate pedestrians on one side and bikeway in both directions. And something I would just point out is, in an effort to comply with just generally adopted standards for widths, for instance, here you'll notice that there is no buffer on the north side bike lane. So I guess we would call that westbound between the travel lane. And that's really to accommodate the 8-foot parking. So something, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking to get some additional feedback. We would be looking to get feedback and support for having narrowed parking lanes, for instance, in exchange for having traditional buffered bike lanes. So this is just one example of, we're looking for some specific direction from this committee.
So can we talk about that now?
I was going to say, we're actually about,
You want to wait?
we're about a third of the way through this. Actually, we're probably
Okay.
halfway through.
We're more than halfway.
Yeah, we're gonna burn through to the end real fast, and
Okay.
let's take lots of time and go back. So we'll mark this as something to return to. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you.
Great. Kind of brings us Doris to Broderson, excuse me. Or how do you pronounce it? I guess I should be asking. But what we mapped here is consistent with the board adopted plans. So the circulation study, the community plans, show the class 1 bike path, class 1 facility on the northern side of the roadway, maintaining two-way class 2 bike lanes. But we know that there's pretty significant implementation challenges here with right-of-way. And so one of the things as we're continuing the design process here is we're looking for a proposed alternative here where something gives. The class 1's maintained, but there's no class 2 bike lanes. The class 1's maintained and class 2 bike lanes are maintained, but parking goes away. So this is where, again, we asked kind of for some feedback from you all. What would you like to see in an alternative here? From a feasibility perspective, this is going to be a challenge for implementation. And then the last segment I have on 2 slides, just because we had it broken down that way, but really from Bush to Fairchild, kind of through the downtown area. here we have the center medians, which are consistent with the circulation study and community plan, but updated lane striping to include, the road diet with buffered bike lanes, off-street parking, um, enhanced pedestrian crossings. That's kind of throughout both or the downtown area. So that gets us to, at this point, do you guys have additional questions, comments? And then the last thing before we really dive into the roundtable here is, that we have the QR code on the screen as well as the link to the URL for the old people like Josh. And we encourage you all to share that link with other folks in your community. As I noted earlier in the presentation, we're open until June 6th. We're keeping the public comment portion of the website open until June 6th. And it's a really great way for us to funnel community input. I think on our last presentation, Jake had noted was 3,700 individual views, and I think like 13,000 comments or something crazy like that. So please do share. And then Josh has got his hand raised, so take it away, Hefe.
And I just wanted to, just the last comment, just even though we kind of bounced through just a few kind of key locations, we do have the plan, and we do have some additional slides for every section. So if there's a section of road that we didn't cover and you have questions, just give us a second to let us know where your question's at, and Tyler can pull those up.
Okay. So, I love the areas that you've pulled out. I think we do have comments about those. Let's start in reverse, but I'd like to start with the area in front of the senior mobile home parks. Because I believe you did a road diet there, but I don't think we really saw where the diet was. And maybe you could just explain that.
Just
And
to
then-
clarify, Templeton resident for a long time. When
Sorry.
you say in front of the senior mobile home parks, I don't
Keep
always know where
going
that
out of
might be.
town. It's on the
Okay.
other side of South Bay Boulevard. Keep going. Keep going. Oh, what?
Continue.
Yeah.
This is the last
Yeah.
slide that I have
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, this is it. Willow.
Gotcha.
Because if you were traveling west, you would come to South Bay Boulevard. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
that is correct. So Deborah, the discussion that we had, or what we had proposed
Mhm.
previous, was that we would include language within the plan of the option for road diet. I think we talked about going down to 2 lanes, and I'm not sure it's shown. I believe this is the section you're talking about.
Yeah,
So basically, you're looking at between the bridge and South Bay almost, right?
correct.
Yeah.
This is the way it looks now.
This is the way that it looks now. So again, we're kind of put in this funny position where we need to present the plan as what is. This is what's approved, adopted, accepted, but this is the feedback we want to develop alternatives. So if there is, we're trying to work in with some funding constraints. So if there's a super strong desire by this committee, I would recommend um, submitting that to us, that we would come up with detailed separate plan drawings. But again, in looking at our wallet, we thought it was best to just simply note that within the plan document itself, that this section of road should be considered for a road diet under a future restriping program. Because there is no capital improvement proposed for this area. It would just merely be a restriping project, which frankly is what we're doing for phase 1 for for Vineyard Drive, so we would not object to that.
So what would that look like, Josh? If you were to restripe it, what would you be accomplishing by doing that? You would be taking up some for more of a bike lane and narrowing the road in that way?
Yeah, you'd ultimately, yeah, so you would, that's a great question. What you'd end up with is one less lane. Everything is pretty standard right now in terms of lane widths with very minimal bike lanes. And so we could end up with more comfortable bike lanes, a wider buffer, and I would envision a somewhat larger middle two-way left turn lane.
Trish, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I love the increased bike lanes. I think that's pretty much mandatory. I think what Deborah was trying to hint at is we have two large mobile home parks there. And the seniors have come to a majority of the LOCAC meetings saying that they can't turn left when they leave their mobile home park. The traffic is going too fast, and I think the average age was like 85 or something. So there is a risk, of course, for them trying to get out. I don't want stop signs or anything like that, but I think that's where our big concern for this section came from, was just the amount of seniors that have come to us saying that they can't get out of their communities.
Yeah, and it's very understandable because coming from San Luis Obispo, the speed limit is much higher. And as you approach Los Osos, the road gets wider and people continue driving at that high rate of speed, even though the sign says 45 and then 35. That's not what's happening. And so I mean, it's like a freeway, and it's very difficult for these seniors to get out of these of their homes. And in fact, Pauline put out a petition with over 500 signatures, which I still have in my file cabinet. Ideally, a median would slow things down and provide a protected turn for them to go to Ralph's or, into Los Osos. But I see where the striping could certainly be an improvement. So, and with the bike, people would love it. Not being a cyclist myself, but having cyclists here on the committee.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, we completely understand. So that's great. That's great feedback. And I advocate for that also, that this would be included in the plan language.
Okay, Jim, you have your hand up?
So my concern was that if you reduced it down to 2 lanes in each direction, that those residents trying to get out of the mobile home park would have an even more difficult time turning, because there would just be a constant stream of traffic. My suggestion is there any way to either put speed bumps, or what other mechanisms are available to lower traffic there to make that turn easier?
It sounded like you had a couple of different questions in that, but in terms of slowing cars down, road diets are the go-to. I think if you look at Caltrans FHWA guidance, that for speed control and speed reduction, roadway diets, lane narrowing is kind of the go-to. Speed bumps are a hard no. If you want to know why, talk to your state fire marshal.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. And negotiating one lane of oncoming traffic is much easier than negotiating 2 lanes. It's not going to change. The volumes will not change the number of vehicles, but at least you're only having to negotiate with 1 lane at a time.
Understood. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And there are a lot of cyclists that go out Los Osos Valley Road. I see them all the time. So would love to see that. So I don't see any other hands up. So we'll just keep moving on into Los Osos. We can, from my perspective, we could go back to the Bush section. If anybody else wants to see another section, raise your hand. But I'm just going to keep driving until you stop me. So here we talked about this, the median there. Here's the problem. On the south side of the street, there are some restaurants, there's a brew pub, and there's a Rexall Drugs. We're going to lose our CVS drugstore on the other side of the street, in the shopping center by Starbucks. So that's going to leave that as being our only pharmacy unless you go to Ralph's. Now, if you're traveling west, there's no access to those businesses if you're traveling west. I mean, if there is, I'm not seeing it. So what's going to happen, I think, is people are going to get to the end of that median and they're going to make an illegal left turn there to
Yeah.
get around. So what's the solution?
So this was one of the comments that was on
Yeah.
your letter that you had sent over. So in this, just again, stepping back to 30,000 feet, the median here is basically what's consistent with the circulation study as well as the community plan. We have not gone through an updated analysis of post receiving your comments. So we haven't gone and really studied this. But that's kind of like the answer that I have for you right now is we did receive your comment. We haven't reviewed it. We haven't solved that yet. Josh, I don't know if you want to speak a little to this, or maybe Ariel, if you want to speak a tiny bit to this, but we did hear your comment.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
so the simple approach is that my assumption is that this was included because of level of service. The Board of Supervisors has adopted a level of service standard for intersections and roadways, and one of the ways that you can increase level of service is reduce the amount of traffic coming in and going out of that roadway. If this is some inadvertent hardship, I think that this plan is exactly, you're pointing out the exact reason we wanted to do this plan was to try to highlight if there's some either inconsistencies, conflicts, informal plans, or just things that frankly don't work. And a raised median here, again, I kind of agree with you that if we don't want to improve level of service, but increase traffic collision potential. So two-way left turn lane here can certainly solve that issue. I don't know what the traffic analysis would look like, and we're happy to look at it though.
well, so here, people are going to stop in order to make that left turn and wait until they have that chance to make that left turn. That's going to back up traffic towards the intersection at Bayview Heights. So, I mean, the whole
Yeah.
thing.
So thank you, Deborah. I am crystal clear about what you're
Okay.
seeing, and we'll bring you an answer. How's that sound?
I like it.
All right.
Trish, you have your hand up.
Okay, so my question was, I think this is pretty much a non-starter for this area because people are going to be making U-turns, people are going to be pulling out, you're going to be causing accidents by having that median there. I just think it would be better to keep what we have where you can pull in and turn left, or you can, from both directions. That Rexall, the tavern, is so busy 7 days a week. There is no way that this is going to work for the local tavern and for the local Rexall. It's not going to work. So I would expect at 3 o'clock some morning, someone would tear it out so that we can keep turning. So yeah, I strongly disagree with a median there. Thank you.
Well, we'll let you guys come back with a fix for that because, yeah, that people aren't going to stop going to the ale house and they will continue to, go to the pharmacy. So we'll move on. So what's the next intersection that we need to look at? The Doris intersection? Does anybody else have
Yeah,
an idea?
It was fine.
if we're going backwards, I mean, we kind of skipped over the Fairchild intersection, which is one of the ones we made comments on, because in some parts of the plan it said there'd be a signal there, but then in the actual plan there wasn't a signal there, and that's also where there's a high traffic delays under the traffic analysis.
Thank you, David, for reminding.
Yeah, so to touch on that, so from an illustrative perspective, what we're looking at here, whether it's stop controlled or a signalized intersection, it's really going to look the same here. And in the analysis that you pointed out, we did have a level of service F that was caught both internally and externally. So that does not align with board standards. And so showing that as a signalized intersection is what will be in the next updated set.
Okay.
And I believe
Okay,
that's
thank
what,
you.
I think that's consistent with what's in the fee program also.
Yep. It is.
Okay, great. I see, Trish, you still have your hand up. Do you still have a comment? Jim?
Yes, so are you aware that having the median in front of the post office, and having a median in front of Starbucks, there's really only one turn in to both to the shopping center on the north side of the street, and then this will be where people come also to make a U-turn to get into the post office on the south side of the street. So again, the medians are gonna make people make a bunch of turns in the midst of traffic. And I'm just curious what your solution is for people that are traveling west on Los Osos Valley Road, having to make a U-turn at Sunset, and all of those trying to come in and out of the shopping center on the north side of the road.
So again, I go back to my talking point of this plan is displaying what my predecessors, your predecessors have all advocated for and approved. And so I think we can add just a general comment, Tyler and Ariel, about re-examining the efficiency of the raised medians here. So, but again, I love it that my job sometimes is being the bearer of bad news. We want to set expectations. This plan, as adopted, cannot substantially deviate from what has been adopted by our Board of Supervisors. We can certainly offer alternatives and we can put warning labels on it, like the CDs when I was a kid. But what's adopted is what's inked. But I do want to point out if there's areas that are incongruent, and that is a major purpose of this plan. So I don't want to. I want to just be clear, and then I'm trying to turn you guys all into disciples that what gets adopted in the plan will also include these ad alternatives. And so, Deborah, going back to the homes that are on the east side of east of South Bay, the plan's going to show a 4-lane road, but it's going to include that ad alt to go down to a road diet because that's what's approved. And I think these will be some great bullet points to say, hey, this plan has identified some inconsistencies or some problem areas. This is, again, I think one of them is you're pointing out, Jim.
Yeah, but the good news here is that these are not going to be illegal turns, and they're going to be protected turn lanes. So they're not going to back up traffic. So, perfect isn't going to happen, right? We're going to do the best we can with what we've got.
Before we leave this segment, I wanted to add a comment, but I wanted to give your committee a chance to just ask any other questions.
Anybody else? David?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I still don't quite understand how these that why we're limited to being constrained by the previous plans, because in a sense, the previous plans are all by definition outdated. Things have changed, and this is all being. You're saying the constraint is stuff that's been approved by the Board of Supervisors. I mean, it seems to me that just means you have to go and ask the Board of Supervisors to permit you to update the plans with things that aren't in the previous plans. I mean, it's not like whatever the Board of Supervisors said years ago is set in stone. They're still there, and to some extent, we're advising them as well. So I'm just a little unclear on what the process is and why we're not able to propose what we think is the best solution for something, rather than being constrained by things that are kind of seems artificial and old.
Okay, well, I apologize for that, and if I'm not being completely clear in my description, I'm not sure what more to add except to say that those plans are the parent documents. This is a child document, if that's a better description.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, we're going to ask the board to adopt this plan. It'll become of record, but we do have to be consistent with prior work. To go back and rewind the community. I don't think anyone sitting here tonight wants to revisit and rewind the community plan and that whole process. So we want to be consistent with that. This is that opportunity, though, to go on the record of here's what's going to work best for our community. And this is why we're diving into this level of detail, where the striping is going to go, where the crosswalks are going to go, where there should be bulb outs. And I think that's why there's these, we wanted to do this. We saw what you're seeing, that there's these missing elements and there's these incongruencies in the plans in terms of how the community develops. So ultimately, what will prevail, and I'll go back to my example with the Vineyard Corridor plan, the 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 recommendations of the Vineyard Corridor plan is what is getting installed under that grant program. And I would expect the same for this area. If we develop, say, for instance, a grant that comes in and reimagines Fairchild to Bush, it's going to follow the recommendations of this plan, and it will go through its own micro level of engineering at the time. Here we're approximating, let's say, these left turn lanes. They might be 50 feet shorter or 100 feet longer. I don't know in the final plan, but as you get into the actual final design, that some of those micro level details will get worked out. So we're on the same team. I want to point out,
Yeah.
it's caught between a rock and a hard place. I have to respect what's been adopted, but we also want to go on record about, and we're happy to actually even say, hey, the alternative is the preferred alternative.
Okay.
So
So you can basically say, you can say, here's something that's consistent with the prior plans. Here's what we recommend. It's not consistent with the prior plans, but we still think it's the better option. And then
certainly, and I say I fully suspect that when we get down the road here to Doris to Broders or Broderson to Doris for the class one path, the class implementation of the class one path and respecting all prior adopted documents is going to mean significant right of way impacts that I suspect this committee and the full LOCAC are not really wanting to endeavor on in the next 30 plus years. Okay, so if you don't mind, Deborah, I would jump in and just give my comment of what's going on here at Sunset Drive.
Mhm.
Again, here, this is just an intersection improvements at Sunset. I will, I guess, take off half of my public works hat and say, I am not a huge fan of putting a uncontrolled crossing at this location. And we would, if your committee or the full LOCAC felt strongly one way or the other, we would welcome that. The crossing here, there's a crossing here today. this was recently updated to RRFBs. It's a really long way to walk. The the alternative here of putting in bulb outs and shortening that crossing is fine. It is a Band-Aid, and it would be better for folks to walk to either Fairchild or down to 9th Street to cross LOVR. But we also want to respect the existing improvements that are out there. I'm just not a fan of doing an uncontrolled crossing through this busy section of road. And if we had support to get rid of a crossing here, no problem. That's preferred alternative. So
Interesting.
yeah, you're
Okay.
welcome to deliberate that now or follow with us in email. Just and this will be at location we'll probably be talking about at the full LOCAC. It's not an ideal, it's just not an ideal crossing. At the point where Fairchild is signalized, great place to cross the street. I get it, it is atrociously inconvenient if you're coming down Sunset.
Yes. So let's open it up for comments. I'll start. I see people attempting to cross there. Lights are flashing. Traffic doesn't stop. Doesn't even slow down. I don't think people see it because people don't cross there very often. It's not a school zone. And so they really just zoom right through, and there might actually be a person. I saw one just the other day with a walker trying to cross there. I agree with you, Josh. It's a bad idea to have this intersection. The problem is there is no sidewalk between Sunset and Fairchild. I have seen a woman in a motorized wheelchair leave the parking lot, have to go off the pavement into the street so that she can get to Fairchild because there was no sidewalk. So she's in the bike lane in a motorized wheelchair.
So you actually raise a great point, Deborah, and my apologies that it's not really jumping out with exclamation points on this plan. That is something that we'll do a better job of showing. Uh, again, taking off half of my hat, my personal sentiments are we've got to have the sidewalk gap closures as a part of the scope for these areas. We cannot, traditionally the county has waited for development to show up to put in sidewalks, and that works great when you're Orange County and all you're doing is constructing, but we're Los Osos, and it could be multi decades before some of these parcels develop, and it's never going to get cheaper to put in sidewalks. So um, a big apology that that's not jumping out on this plan, but yes, sidewalk gap closures through this zone is a priority.
Great. So if we get the sidewalk, then I say, yes, the Fairchild thing, that works. And so anybody else jump in, talk about this intersection?
No.
Sorry, David, if you want to go.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I mean, I do think it's nice to be able to cross there. If you're going to the grocery store or the pharmacy or the bakery and you want to go across the street to your bank, it's nice to be able to go across there without walking, 2 blocks in each direction. So,
Seamus?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with everybody here. This is definitely an unsafe crossing. My concern would be if you take away the stripes, people would continue to cross there just, without a crosswalk. And because I think the detour, right, Fairchild's pretty good, but the kids that I see crossing the street there they're not going to go 3 blocks out of their way to just get across the street. They're just going to go.
Yeah, you've totally highlighted the internal struggle that we have, is that it's not ideal to have such a big crossing on at an uncontrolled location, and you want to make going to the best crossing the most attractive. We're actually dealing with this exact same issue in another community as we speak, is trying to make the better crossing the more attractive route. So and again, this kind of goes back to my prior comment about the hardcore engineering would is going to ultimately prevail on where the crossing would go. And I think we're just looking for, and again, putting my hat back on, we're just looking for uh, this committee's direction or support one way or the other. If you all love having a crossing at Sunset, then by all means, let's absolutely keep it. And then when these future projects come in, just do it as best they can for the time.
Jeff,
Oh, Jim.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, I would advocate for eliminating that crosswalk if we were able to get the sidewalk extension to Fairchild. I just don't think there's any way you're going to make that crosswalk safe. I can't tell you how many times I've seen issues in that crosswalk. People they just don't see it. The drivers just don't see people in that. I know that I think there's a flashing light there,
Yeah.
but it's just very, very difficult to see it with distracted drivers and things. So my suggestion would be to eliminate that crosswalk, and with the caveat of extending that sidewalk to Fairchild.
Jim,
I would just say the opposite, actually. I think Los Osos only has 3 blocks of downtown, and people typically who live on the north side or the south side of Los Osos Valley Road. I see people carrying bags of groceries trying to cross that intersection. I just think for the 3 blocks that we have, to have a couple protected crosswalks is no big deal. And if you have some, you know, traffic diet and you've reduced the speeds and you're down to single lane, I think it might be more manageable. So I think keep it if you can.
David,
Yeah, and I was going to ask too, doesn't it become more manageable when it's a single lane? But then the other question, I guess, is we have the median, which may not be there because we may redo the median. I mean, if you have a median there, then you're only really crossing one lane of traffic at a time, which seems to be pretty manageable to me. But there's a few things in play here, obviously.
all right, well, I guess we leave it to the analysis at this point.
I like it. That's actually great. That was actually a great discussion. Thank you. All right,
All right.
moving on.
Any
Where
other-
do you want to go? Where can we take you next, Deborah?
Well, how about Doris? Unless anybody, or Palisades, did anybody want to go to Palisades? Here was Doris. Are we
Actually-
good?
Actually,
Here?
if we're
Jim? Jim has a comment.
Between Doris and Palisades, you have a bike path proposed on the south side of the road. Are you going to eliminate parking there? I mean, you have it both, but are you going to widen the road to make that possible, or just the reduction in lane size will work?
Yeah, so this is where we were talking earlier about a proposed alternative.
Well, sorry, I'm gonna jump in. It sounds like we're
Jump
talking
in.
about two different segments. Is everyone good talking the what we're calling the Broderson to Doris?
What
Yes.
we're looking at
I
now,
think
we're
what-
Pine,
Okay, good.
let's
all
stay
right.
here.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry, sorry, Tyler. Go ahead.
It's just what we commented earlier where this is that stretch of roadway where right of way is a pretty significant constraint. Maintaining the class 1 parking bike and class 2 bike lanes.
Okay, yeah.
And so to follow up on your question, that's what we're looking for. Your recommendation here is what's important to you all.
Okay, the class 1 bike, multi-purpose, whether it's bike, pedestrian, on the north side, in my opinion, is the priority. It serves multi-uses. Yeah, the parking is such a problem because you have all those homes there with like no place for them to park. But I think you sort of had the solution, didn't you, by reducing the lane sizes? And that gave you a little more room to put in the bike lane there? Is
Yeah,
that right?
Hey, Deborah, this is Josh and committee. That is sort of true. So I think through some prior comments, and you can see it here slightly, that thank you very much. The class 1 path is as narrow as it can be made. Basically, yes, everything is as narrow as it can be made. And especially though, when you look east of Pine, it's still not narrow enough. So if you don't mind panning slightly, Tyler, thank you. That even when you go absolute minimum lanes, minimum, in this class 1 path, by the way, showing what we have here, we would have to grant ourselves an exception to the FHWA guidance. And that still puts this path, you can see, in these poor people's front yard. And so we're looking for feedback on not just minimizing, but what gets cut.
Yeah.
If we're looking for some lower hanging fruit, so to speak, and a pathway, pun intended, if you're looking for a pathway to getting this class 1 path between now and the next 30 years, then we're probably going to have to, as best we can, avoid these right-of-way impacts. So that means looking at alternatives that remove parking, removing the bike lanes, the class 2 bike lanes. We don't recommend removal of the two-way left turn lane. It is a road hazard to have all these vehicles trying to turn in and out of their driveways on the south side. That one probably would not get staff support to remove the two-way left turn lane. So it's really, we're in a battle royale between the class 1 path, the class 2 bike lanes, and parking. And again, you don't have to make any final decisions, but we would like to get some feedback on what are the priorities as we're trying to squeeze this thing down.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're suggesting that we could pull that class 1 multipurpose pathway into the street, taking over the bike lane. So now that bike lane is not going to be there. It's going to be the pathway for bikes and pedestrians. And would there be, like, what do they call those? Armadillos or something, some sort of barrier or protection for that pathway between it and the traffic?
We would advise that the class 1 path still be a separated.
Oh, it'd still be separated.
It's still going to be a
Correct.
it's still going to be a separated path. I'm not terribly comfortable actually with this current layout having only a 2-foot barrier. I don't have the FHWA guidance memorized, but it's usually 3 to 5 to 6 feet of buffer between a travel lane and a class 1 path. So so again, that's the trade-off. Is you have, well, actually the fourth conflict point is the right-of-way. So you have a right-of-way conflict. Somebody's got either right-of-way has to give the class 1 path has to give, the class 2 bike lanes have to give, or parking has to give. And we're not asking you guys to go on record and make like some, you know, rob Peter to pay Paul. We're just wanting to get some guidance. What is your priority? If your priority is getting in a legitimate class 1 path, then we'll have to go back to the drawing table and look at an alternative, likely that removes the bike lanes first.
Yeah, we don't want to wait for right away because that's never going to happen. We want something sooner rather than later. And so figuring out how to get that space, whether it's taking it from parking or incorporating it into the bike lane, to me is the only way that makes sense. Seamus.
I just had two questions. The first was on that. So when we talk about removing the bike lanes, on the north, if we just remove the north side one, does that give, and this may be a question you guys have to look at, but I don't know if that gives us enough space, right, to put the bike path in. I think that, is something that seems reasonable to me. The second question is, I don't know if there were any plans or discussions at all about somehow making the intersection with Pine and the bike path sort of extra visible. Again, like, I don't know exactly how you would do that, but my concern would be lots of kids going to the school, zipping along. You potentially have some, right, conflicts there.
Actually, that's great feedback. So just real quick on your first point about the answer is I don't know, without diving into the details and doing the math on what will fit in there. It's at least the westbound, I guess, north side buffered bike lane that would go away. But I suspect that it's going to be encroaching on to get that the square footage, it's going to mean the south side bike lane too. I don't know. To your question about controls at Pine Avenue, we don't have any examples here in front of us, but where this class 1 path crosses a street, I would expect there to be some sort of intersection controls, and that's the kind of feedback that we're looking to hear from, and I would love to include that in the plan. Not just at this location, but I think there's a couple other spots where the path crosses the road that we would look for some kind of enhanced control devices.
Jim?
Just have two comments. One, at Pine and Los Osos Valley Road, that intersection is so tight that when buses are traveling west, they have to wait for the intersection to completely clear of traffic in order to turn right and go north on Pine. It's so narrow, they turn directly into the traffic lane, oncoming traffic. And so they back up traffic now, waiting for enough traffic to go and clear so they can make that right-hand turn. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, we saw your comment. Yeah, I know that was one of the comments that came in previously. And just to give a quick answer on that, there was a swept path analysis which was done for turning radiuses based on the plan that you're looking at now. I think maybe some of that condition now without the road diet, it may be a little bit different of a turning motion, but that from where we are today, there was a preliminary swept path analysis that shows that turning motion onto Pine.
Okay. And then the other thing, to Deborah's point, I concur. The class 1 protected path on the north side has to be the priority. I mean, we see people pushing grocery carts on on that road on the north side. I mean, it's just very dangerous, and there's so many pedestrians. That has to be the priority. And if we lose a class 1 bike path on the north side of the road, and cyclists have to go out of their way and go south for a block and come around. It's a lot easier to do that on a bike than on foot.
Yeah, and David, I see your hand up, but I just want to add to that. The scariest moment is when you're driving down Los Osos Valley Road at night and someone is walking on that side of the street in dark clothes and you don't even see them until the last moment. And it is like so frightening. So that is such a priority for us for all the reasons. David.
Yeah. Yeah. Just speaking sort of as a cyclist, I don't mind giving up the class 2 bike lane on the one side and being pushed onto the class 1. With the provision that it's very helpful to have clear signage about what cyclists are supposed to do. It's kind of the worst thing is you go to a certain point and then you realize, oh, I'm supposed to be on the bike path. I'm not supposed to be here. And then, or when the class 1 bike path ends, and all of a sudden you're dumped, back someplace without any warning or smooth transition. So I think it's fine giving up the class 2 path, but it just want to design so it's easy to go from one to the other.
That's great feedback. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll go to Doris. You guys, thank you so much for being such a great committee. I mean, I just love how engaged you all are. So, we're getting to the end here. Doris, I think this looked great to me, what you guys did here.
Perfect. Next slide.
I didn't see any hands, so I'm just saying. Yeah, no, go ahead. Next slide. Okay, now there's a piece missing here.
Yeah, you skipped a little bit.
They skipped Montana Way.
I did. I put that at the end.
Here we go.
Okay, but yeah. I have to say, I missed this before, and then the second time around, I go, how did I miss that sidewalk there? You really need to do an analysis on this because I've been driving this with the sidewalk crossing off of Pecho Road in my mind, and I don't see how people would see someone in a crosswalk traveling away from Montana de Oro. That's the best way for me to say it. Away from Montana de Oro. They're going towards slow. They're not even going to see anybody in that crosswalk. And here's the biggest problem. They are going fast. It's a downhill. And they're probably going minimum 45 miles an hour. Even though there's a sign that says 35 curve, they're going 45 and sometimes 50 miles an hour around this curve. I drive it every day. You can't put, honestly, I'm telling you, I don't think you could put a sidewalk there. I think it would be suicide. That's just my opinion.
You mean
Deborah,
a crosswalk?
just to clarify, I think what you're talking about is the crossing of, I guess technically that's LOVR, crossing of LOVR at Pecho Road. Is that correct?
Correct. There's no
Okay.
crossing there now.
There is no crossing there now. I agree. That is
And
great
there's a
comment.
drainage outlet. That's actual sidewalk goes right to a drainage outlet.
Now there is a
big one.
crosswalk that goes east-west, in parallel to Pecho Road towards Monarch Grove. But the crosswalk that goes across Los Osos Valley Road, that crosswalk goes into the nursery.
Yeah, there's a nursery there. There's no homes there. I don't
And there's
know
no
why.
sidewalk there.
I don't know why. There's no sidewalk there.
It makes no sense to have that
Yeah,
crosswalk.
great suggestion.
So I would take that out. But Seamus had a suggestion. If you needed a crosswalk there for some reason, if you go back towards Monarch Grove Elementary.
I have to skip around on my presentation.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so there's the school. So Seamus said to me, Deborah, kids cross the street here coming out of the parking lot. And I go, really? I went to their bike, what did they call it? Walk and roll day at school the other day. I showed up, and what did I see? Not just kids, but parents parking on the south side of the street and walking across
Mhm.
to the parking lot with their kids. And I go, Seamus was right.
Mm.
Those people are crossing there, coming, at the out of that parking lot. And I can see why. Because if you don't, you have to walk all the way up to Doris
Mm.
to get across the street. So if you wanted to, I'm just suggesting if you wanted to put a crossing somewhere, you might look at that. At least it would be visible.
I'm gonna head back over here to Petro because I think to wrap up this conversation, we did hear you. We saw this one on the list that came in about a month ago. It has been discussed here internally, and I think Jake or Josh just kind of echoed your all's thoughts that this is maybe not the greatest crossing in the world, and we're in alignment with kind of an update to the plan there.
Okay, great. Montana Way, same problem. Traffic, just zooming. And again, not seeing, Josh, you and I have had this conversation about the way that intersection is, where you cannot see the people standing, the pedestrians standing there on the corner. So I hope you have a solution for that there. I don't see a bulb out.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's a great suggestion. This is what you're seeing, right? That geometry that's at Montana Way, that is a classic remnant of 19 probably 50s era rural road section engineering. So we unfortunately have this exact geometry in dozens of locations. And yeah, I think squaring that intersection up and formalizing it is a great suggestion.
Yeah, we need make it easier for people to be visually seen. And then what's left is Rodman, I think, and I think we pretty much discussed that. You guys that have that pretty dialed in, I believe, in terms of getting that crossing and flashing lights and all of that. So, Jim,
I just wanted to point out again, the crosswalk is, as indicated here, is on the north side of or on the south side of the intersection. Everybody crosses on the south side of that intersection. And there if you look at your image here, there's a tiny little walking path that the owners put in front of their house here to aid pedestrians crossing. And so your crosswalk is on the wrong side of that intersection and needs to be moved to the other side.
So I knew that would come up as a question, and just to speak to that, the main purpose of locating it here, and again, the final engineering would bear itself out. That curve that you're approaching does not give sufficient sight distance, so far as I can tell, to put in an appropriate crossing on, I think what you're calling the south side. I'll call, east, on the easterly side of
Okay.
Rodman. I totally agree that it's I think that's been the more common location for folks to cross, and at the time that the detailed engineering would happen, we would definitely look at that. But for purpose, since there is no previously adopted plan for what to do here, we decided we're going to just locate it on that far side as a worst case scenario.
Okay, and then as a follow-up, because of the equestrians that cross there, we've talked about putting some sort of signal there for them to aid in their crossing.
So just like is down on Fairchild and Sunset right now, those rapid flashing beacons, they do make a modified version of that for equestrians.
yeah, perfect. That's
Perfect.
exactly what's needed. Yeah. All right. Have we covered everything? Does anybody else have any comments? Is there any, Trish? Jeff? Jay, you're muted.
Maybe you answered this, but I didn't catch it. The crosswalk at Pacho and Rodman, why did you select that side of Rodman? Was that what you answered a minute ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about a minute ago. We wanted to provide additional sight distance for vehicles heading westbound approaching the crosswalk.
Okay.
Jim?
And I'm
Thank
not, I can't, I wouldn't put I would not be willing to put my engineering stamp on it today that that's what will ultimately end up, but this is a worst case. Well, worst case is the
Yeah,
wrong word.
I
I
guess
think people will cross where the crosswalk is, so wherever you put it, that's where they're gonna go.
And if
No, I
there's a
just-
path
my-
there, people will go to the path.
Not if there's a crosswalk.
But I mean, if this new path is extended all the way to the west side of the road there, like it's indicated here, then people would cross there if there was a path on to cross the street to get to. Correct?
I say wherever the crosswalk is where people will cross. Because they'll feel safe.
Yeah, we just want to make sure it's compliant and not, again, we haven't gotten to the micro engineering details of this, but it didn't look like there was probably the appropriate sight distance going around that curve for pedestrians. I mean, you're all familiar with it, you drive it frequently, you go through that curve and I can't stand the current crossing location because it's just right in the middle of that curve.
Yep.
Mhm.
It's not even a crossing, it's just the path just ends.
Yeah, it's just a tiny trail.
Yep.
Jeff or Trish, did you still have
I
a
think we're
comment?
good.
Okay,
I just have one more comment, Deborah, and that is, there's only, most of the people, or I should say, if I'm leaving slow and I'm coming into Los Osos, once I'm in Los Osos, if I had to deal with 6 to 8 pedestrian crossings and it took me longer to get through town, but it provided safe crossings for pedestrians at the intersections that we've discussed tonight, then to me, I would be much more willing to have a slower egress and ingress in and out of Los Osos, but have more safety for pedestrians crossing. So we have a lot of people that walk. It's a small community, and we have a lot of elderly people that don't drive, but they walk to the store or the pharmacy. And I think safety for pedestrians has to be priority for traffic control. That's my comment.
yep.
So Deborah, when we go to the board, I want you to just clip out what Jim just said and and have him read it back to the board. That's the kind of endorsement and support we would love to hear at the board when we get there.
You will have it. You will have it. So,
Great comment, Jim. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here.
I suggest we table the rest of the agenda and we can just call it good here. We'll move those on to next month's agenda. But this has been such a great conversation with both of you, Tyler and Joshua. I'm just really happy that we had a chance to get down to the nitty gritty here. And so we will expect you to come back for our June 26th meeting. What will you need from us then? Because right now the council has asked for us to bring their recommendations.
Yeah, so firstly, I brought this project timeline kind of back up on the screen. Just again, we're here May 20th. Our next big project milestone is we are closing public comment in 2 weeks. So continue to get that word out. This was an excellent discussion. We want the community of LOCAC or Los Osos to be involved with the plan. We've had a ton of outreach, and so continue to get that word out. And then again, at the next time you see me and Josh will be on June 26th. And at that point, we'll have a final draft, and we'll be asking for your support in taking that to the board.
Okay.
Sorry,
All right.
and just to clarify, I love you all. I hope to not see you at the next Traffic and Circulation Committee on this topic, but I would be happy to volunteer my time to come back for your June meeting prior to the full LOCAC if there's just anything that you want to get covered.
So does that mean you're gonna be sending us the final?
So
Okay,
well, it's technically not final until the board adopts it. So we would have what we call the final draft or 100% draft from the consultant. We're targeting early to mid-June for that document. Incorporate all the comments we've received. We're going to close comments on June 6th. We're not waiting to get those everything. We're trying to go in and like I said, we're looking at alternatives for that Doris to Broderson section already, but we want to hit the ground as quickly as possible after that June 6th closing with a final or 100% draft or final draft plan that we'll make sure that you have a copy of that and you have access. It'll be posted on the project's website. And ideally, we see you again at LOCAC on the 26th, and we can do a little more formal presentation of the final plan, talk through some of these items that have been raised and how they were addressed, and then seek LOCAC's support as we go to the board.
okay, very good. So the council has tasked this committee with bringing forth the recommendation for how they should vote. And what's happened tonight is you have assuaged many of our concerns about the plan. And so I think we're going to be able to give that recommendation to the council. We'll wait and see what the final 100% draft, is that what you called it? Anyway,
Final draft or 100% draft, whatever you want to, however you want to refer to it.
yeah.
Final,
it's
final, I like that.
Final. Okay,
The pre-final.
okay.
You'll
Sounds all
always
good.
find some typos that need to be corrected at a minimum.
Yeah, and just some of our other comments about moving some of the material into appendixes just to make the study easier to read. Those are minor, obviously, just suggestions, but the real concerns are the things we talked about tonight, and we appreciate your time.
Yeah, and that was kind of our strategy tonight of not going through those one by one because there are ministerial comments that we all have here, and so we're really happy for your time here. We're happy to be a part of this conversation. I think this was one of our better discussions. So thank you all for you know, allowing us to present here with you guys.
Happy to do it. Happy to have you. All
All
right.
right. Well, we'll see some of you on June 26th. And like I said, I'll email you this presentation, Deborah, so you guys can post it with your minutes. It has my contact information. So if you all need anything, please feel free to reach out.
All right, sounds good. All right, thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.